Hello, my name's Valerie, and I'm making this video as a payback of gratitude because I had, and I love using the past tense, SVT, and it got progressively bad in that the episodes were more frequent and more severe to where I began to seriously consider catheter ablation. And the mere thought of that horrified me. So I went on YouTube and saw probably every single video of people who had had it done and were sharing their experience of that. And that was extremely helpful to me because those people had blazed the trail, and it was like they were extending their hand and guiding me along. And so I'm going to do the same thing and share my experience with catheter ablation for SVT, because I know anyone considering it could have a lot of fear and anxiety, and understandably so. And the tricky thing about SVT is getting the diagnosis. I would have episodes of a racing heart and palpitations, and by the time I would see a doctor for it, it had gone away, and they would tell me I was having panic or anxiety attacks. And I was fortunate in that apparently I was born with this extra pathway in my heart, but I didn't have episodes of SVT until much later in life, like my mid-40s. I'm 53 now. And one day I was driving home and all I did was sniff like that. And it started a major tachycardic palpitation episode, and there was a hospital nearby. So I pulled into the parking lot of the ER, and I just wanted to sit there hoping it would go away, hoping it would stop and I wouldn't have to go in. But that's not what happened. I ended up having to go in, and fortunately I did, because they hooked me up to an EKG and were able to diagnose me with SVT. And from then on, I did research about that. And I had maybe one bad episode a year, an episode where it took a long time for it to stop. One time I had to get IV push adenosine, which those of you who've had that know it's absolutely horrible, but it worked. And still I was not wanting to get catheter ablation. You know, I'm not having many bad episodes, and when I would have little episodes, if I laid down, it would stop, and they didn't make me panic anymore when it happened because I knew what it was. But what really made me to decide was my husband and I had gone to Las Vegas for a long weekend of fun, and 2 days in a row I'm in the ER with SVT getting adenosine. So when I got back home, which that was one scary flight home, because I didn't want to have an episode on the plane, and thank God I didn't, I began my search for an electrophysiologist, cardiologist that I could trust to do the procedure for me. And I met with one cardiologist, and he explained that there's 3 possible locations in the heart where the SVT could be originating from, and one area was close to the AV node, which is very important for conductivity in the heart, and that if it was there, he would try not to get the AV node as well, but I could end up with a pacemaker. So he didn't instill a lot of confidence in me, and I would have consulted with as many electrophysiologists as I needed to find somebody that I trusted and felt good with. And it just so happened that the very next electrophysiologist I saw, Dr. Altimos, I trusted. And he drew a picture of the heart. He showed me the 3 locations where it could be, one, of course, being near the AV node. And he didn't mention anything about it's so close to the AV node, you know, if I might miss, slip, whatever, and you'd have a pacemaker. He didn't even mention that. So I brought it up. And I said, well, I've heard that that's so close to the AV node, you could damage it if you go to ablate in that area. And he told me no worries. And he shared with me all his years of experience, that he's done thousands. He spent 8+ years at the Mayo Clinic, etc. And he had an amazing bedside manner as well. He was very compassionate. So I chose him, and 10 days later, I had the procedure. And leading up to the procedure, I was thinking, I could die that day. This is going to be awful. And I went back to the YouTube testimonials and how everyone says it changed their life having it done. And I also read on the American Heart Association's website about catheter ablation for SVT, and they called it a minimal risk procedure, low risk procedure. And that meant something to me. So fortunately, I was the very first patient that day that the doctor was seeing to perform the procedure on. I got up at 4:30, I bathed, I showered, I did my hair, and was at the hospital by 6 a.m. And one thing I think was critically important of it not being a traumatic experience for me is because I knew I'm going to meet a lot of people at the hospital, and they're all going to be prioritizing me, my care, my safety, my well-being. And that's exactly what happened. I went to the pre-op area. I had an EKG done, vital signs done. A technician, very skilled technician, came in and put an IV in each arm. The registered nurse came in and talked to me and asked me questions. And I asked her questions, how is Dr. Altimos? You ever have someone come back and they're not doing good, and things like that? And she told me that he had an excellent anesthesiologist working with him, and they were a great team, and she's seen success with the procedure. And then Dr. Altimos came in and talked to me, and was warm and smiling and touchy-feely. And then the anesthesiologist came in, and she was a very nice lady. She told me through the years of experience that she had perfected her own cocktail of sedation for the procedure, because they can't completely sedate you because they'll sedate the SVT. And in order for the doctor to know where to ablate or burn, he has to trigger the SVT. But she told me not to worry, that I will be very comfortable, and at certain points in the procedure, she will give me an extra medicine. So then the RN that was in the catheter lab came and got me. And you're fully awake when you go into the lab, and they position you on a table, and it's probably normally not a very comfortable table, but they had gone out of their way to make that table comfortable. And they had a foam head pillow for my head. And then I was positioned on the table. I had sheets over me, and the techs began to surround me. There were like 2 male techs and a female tech, and they put the electrodes all over me, big ones, small ones, front, back. And then they strategically took off my gown as I was still covered up. And they had these special arm holders for my arms, all cushioned and cozy. And then they tied my arms down, but I didn't notice and I didn't care. And then I had already prepared the area, so to speak, my groin, but one of the techs did a little bit more prep in that area. Still awake, and the anesthesiologist, I saw her do something to my left, like they had put an IV in each arm. And I asked her, did you just give me something? And she said yes. And then I started to get a little groggy, and I went to sleep. I did wake up, because it's not a deep sleep you're in. Remember, they have to trigger that SVT. So I woke up in SVT. The palpitations, that awful rhythm. And I just asked the doctor out loud, have you found the SVT? And he said yes. And then I went back to sleep. And then I was awakened again because I could feel him ablating. I could feel the burning in my heart. It didn't hurt, but it did hurt. You know what I mean? It was uncomfortable. It wasn't a good feeling, but it wasn't, oh my God, this is awful, you know? And so then I asked, are you ablating now? And the doctor said yes. And I went back to sleep. And then I woke up again with my heart racing. And I heard the doctor say, that's sinus tachycardia. And I went back to sleep. So after the doctor does the ablation, they check to see, did they get it? And they check by trying to stimulate that SVT again. And he couldn't. He put me in tachycardia, but it was normal rhythm tachycardia. And one thing I learned through this is, in the beginning, I thought SVT was just a fast heartbeat. But no, it's fast, but the ventricles are not able to fill properly with blood. And so your heart's just not getting that blood flow, that oxygenated blood through the body and importantly to the brain. And that's why some people can pass out with SVT. And one thing a doctor had told me in the ER is this could lead to heart failure, blood clot, stroke, all this awful stuff. So I was really glad I decided to get the ablation. Procedure completed. I go to the recovery room. I can't keep my eyes open. I'm given ice chips, and then I'm taken to like a step down recovery unit where they gave me a cracker. I attempted to eat, but whatever medicine the anesthesiologist had given me had dried up all my mucous membranes. Like I had no ability to produce saliva. When I blinked, it didn't bring forth lubrication to my eyes, so I was just keeping my eyes closed, very heavily sedated. And in the meantime, the doctor had met with my husband and told him it was successful. He got it. I eventually recovered from the anesthesia, and after one episode of vomiting, I was discharged home. The main concern everyone had were the access sites in the groin. And my doctor used, and I don't know how new this is, but it was wonderful. It's a collagen seal. So as he's withdrawing the catheter from my groin, he releases this collagen patch that heals the vein, because there's a big concern, you know, that your leg veins, if you do anything strenuous, or there hasn't been proper time for it to clot and seal, that you could bleed, and that would not be a good thing. That would be a complication. But he used that collagen seal, and so I was able to go home the same day. And other people in their testimonials had talked about their legs being very sore, or whatever leg was used, and mine were not. I just had a little tenderness in my right groin, and that was the only groin area he'd used. Now, my SVT was located by the AV node, and this doctor was able to ablate it and cure me. Ablation is a cure. And since I've been discharged home and taken it easy, you know those heartbeats you get right before an SVT, you can kind of tell, okay, it's going to kick off now. I've had a few of those. No SVT. No. I can bend over without SVT happening. And I can see how instead of suffering through life, enduring life with SVT, now that I don't have it, it's like such a burden is lifted, and such a fear is gone. So if you're considering SVT, or ablation for SVT, it's well worth your time to find a doctor that you feel comfortable with, that is skilled, highly skilled, because then you can just surrender to it and experience your new life without those horrible, horrible episodes. And feel free to contact me if you have questions. I'm happy to share. One quick little hack, in one of my very last ER visit for SVT, one of the nurses told me to convert on my own, take a syringe or even a kinked up straw and blow in it as hard as you can for 10 to 15 seconds. And what'll happen is you'll feel your heart rate increase and then the SVT kicks off. So that's a little hack, that's a trick. And I wish I'd known that earlier in the game, but it did save me, 3 episodes of prolonged SVT prior to the ablation. I wish you the best. Have a wonderful procedure if that's what you're considering. It's a everyday thing now, and complications apparently are rare. Bye.